everybody, and welcome to Dungeon of Deadly Delights. I'm, of course, Rob, and with me, as always, is Holly. Holly, what is going on?
Coming to you from quarantine in my bedroom.
Yes, we are quarantined. This is happening during the pandemic. If you guys haven't seen the Alien episode, it's up right now. Really awesome discussion. We actually did a poll before we released it because it was actually in celebration of a release of A Quiet Place Part 2. It seemed like people really wanted it, so we put it out. It was cool. We had a good time with that one. So what's going on in your part of the world right now? Everything's looking like Walking Dead, I'm guessing. Pretty much isolated streets. I'm hoping.
I mean, it's funny because LA has so much traffic anyway.
Yeah.
Like pandemic lack of traffic is almost like normal traffic anywhere else.
Yeah. Well, I'll throw a picture up today, but I actually I've got my whole Mad Max Walking Dead, gear situation going on, like to take the trash out, like right up the street, like and check the mail. I actually had like a skull scarf on my face and black surgical gloves.
If you're gonna do the apocalypse, do it in style.
Absolutely. All right, guys. So we don't want to talk about the pandemic. We actually just want to keep this light, and we believe that content is important right now. So again, I'm going to implore everybody, as I have for a while now, if you do this kind of stuff, just get out there and make it happen. Do your podcast and do your, YouTube videos and all that stuff. Yeah. And the weird thing is that we're pretty much on the same tier as every single celebrity out there right now, which is kind of odd.
Yeah, they're all doing live feeds and shit. It's like, wow, we're all YouTubers right now.
So last time we talked about aliens, and this time we're going to, I guess in some ironic fashion, open the Book of Revelations and talk about angels and demons. This is a topic that we're both very excited about. Oh, and before we start, this is episode 25. Holly and I started working together 7 months ago. And dare I say, and she's not a very emotional person, but this is probably the best 7 months of my career. I'm not kidding.
Hey.
So with that, we'll do a quick toast here. And may the wings of liberty never lose a feather. All right. Now, angels and demons. There's a lot to talk about. And the thing is, like, there's some really cool stuff. When it comes to this subgenre, because it seems like it's a lot of bang bang shoot 'em up and brutal fighting and battles waged between heaven and hell.
Well, what I love about this particular topic is that the mythology of angels versus demons has been around for so long that it's established in everybody's mind, so you don't have to establish it in whatever film or story you're making.
Yeah.
You just immediately go into deconstruction of it. Like there's no, oh, this is how it is. It's like, because everybody knows how it's supposed to be.
Sure.
So I think it leaves room for a lot of really cool interpretations that fuck with it, basically.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. And the interesting thing though, like aside from just shells falling on the floor and all that kind of stuff, there's some really well thought out and dare I say like masterful interpretations of angels and demons too, which we're also going to get into.
Yeah.
So it's not all just like John Wick with wings kind of shit, you know what I mean? But there's a lot of it though. There's a lot of action packed angels and demons.
I'd watch that though. John Wick with wings. That could be John Wick 5. John Wick with
So what is the first one on your list with when it comes to angels and demons?
Well, we talked about, this was the first movie we talked about when we first established angels and demons, because there aren't enough movies like this, and it's not a masterpiece, but it's still fun as hell.
Yeah.
I'm talking about Legion.
Oh yeah.
A 2010 movie starring Paul Bettany.
Great cast too. Dennis Quaid.
Yeah.
There's just the cast that they chose for the diner, for the people in the diner, pretty heavy hitters for the most part.
Yeah. Basically God.
Wasn't it also like Charles S. Dutton and there's quite a few like really prominent actress in this.
Yeah. And basically, God gets decides to take out vengeance on humans, and he sends his legions of angels after humanity. And these people in the middle of the desert are stuck in a diner when it happens. And there's some really cool, like, just fun horror effects. Like Doug Jones has a great cameo as an ice cream man who stops out in front of the diner, and all of a sudden, like, his mouth elongates and he turns into like a spider thing.
Yeah.
There of course, all the angel action stuff is awesome. It's just it does contain the trope of the savior baby who's going to repopulate the earth thing, which I think that's a little tired. I think too many people do it. But aside from that, I think it was a really fun time. I saw it in the theater, and I just loved it.
It's like, fun. It's really fun.
The angels are the bad guys, and that's not bad guys, and that's not used nearly enough, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. No, it was really fun, and Paul Bettany is he's just a very statuesque actor. Like, he's built for the part. He looks the part, and his chops are impeccable too. So I think that was a great choice, for the for the hero part, like we keep using quotations, but it's like you were saying, like, it's cool when because I was raised Catholic, so we were always kind of taught, like, there's hell and there's demons, and then of course there's heaven, and the angels are, like, really sweet, and they're playing their little harps, and but yeah, so it's nice when they turn that on its head, and they've been doing that in film for a very, very long time. So
yeah, well, and like I said, deconstruction, it makes it interesting. It's cool.
Mm-hmm. Well, the other cool thing about this movie, like, you were mentioning, like, mouths agape and stuff, and obviously, like, I think the one scene that people, like, still remember from that particular movie is that the old lady, of course, where her mouth elongates, and then she's like, ah, and she's like run up the ceiling and shit. They really had a lot of fun with the effects on that.
Yeah.
And then, like, you kind of had the whole, like, kind of Matrix, like, bullet time thing going on with the, of course, the, like, fight scenes and stuff. And, it was just a lot of fun. And the other thing I really liked about it was that, spoilers, guys, is that, initially it looked like God, was being vengeful and sending his demons or his angels out to, destroy humanity. But it turns out he was testing them.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, like, I was playing a game with you, emotional game, and you failed. So I like that.
Gabriel failed. Michael apparently came out on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I also think the special effects with because it can look pretty goofy to, like, tag a pair of CGI wings onto an actor, but I thought they did a pretty good job in this film.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't know. Is it considered a cult classic? I would say so.
I don't know. I mean, when I went to see it, it was just getting panned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Critics don't like to watch fun stuff. They want to watch stuff that's intellectual. And I'm just, sure. You know what? Sometimes you just need a fun movie, and Legion fills that slot nicely.
Well, you can go ahead and tell your friends, because this is what Dungeon of Deadly Delights thinks of Rotten Tomatoes. Fuck Rotten Tomatoes.
Yes, absolutely. I hate Rotten Tomatoes. I hope it dies.
Actually, I'm going to talk about one that is another fan favorite. I would consider it a cult classic, but I've been very fortunate to encounter the main man, William Sadler, for a few times in my career, and I am going to talk about Demon Knight, Tales from the Crypt's first movie. Awesome. Just fucking awesome. So you have William Sadler playing this character, Stryker, and he is in charge of Jesus's blood that is technically, like, in this ancient vial. And then you've got this really great situation where he gets holed up in, like, kind of like it looks like a halfway house / hotel. And there, you know what I mean? So you've got all these different types, you know, to kind of play with, because they're all, I would say, emotionally fucked up. Like one of them's a drunk, you know, and you know, one's in love with, you know, a very promiscuous woman, and you know, like like her fucking boyfriend's an asshole, and there's just so much shit to play with there. And then you've got this awesome and wonderful performance by Billy Zane, who oh my god, I remember when this came out, I was actually God, I was dating a girl, and I think every woman at that point was all about fucking Billy Zane in that movie. Like they were just like, they'd start salivating. You know, the bald head and just the swagger, and you know what I mean? Like, you know, just his comedic chops were, you know, just excellent. There was nothing you couldn't love about that character, as much of a bastard and horrible as he was. So then, of course, you had a situation where, you know, he's trying to get in, and you know, he's got his own little blood thing, and he cuts his hand and, you know, like releases it onto the ground. And then of course you have these amazing fucking demons, you know, that rise, you know, his little army. Oh my god. And then fucking William Sadler, you know, like he can actually open the vial, and he can like run it across a doorway. So that's pretty much like the, you know, like the protection that they have, the only protection that they have for this guy coming in. And they're constantly like tearing through windows and shit. He's playing with their minds. You know, great special effects, by the way. Really, really cool.
Yeah, especially for when was it made? 90 something?
It was the early 90s. I know that. Yeah. Really great performance by the late Dick Miller. Man. And one of the first performances by Jada Pinkett. You know, of course, Will Smith's wife. And she fucking kills it in this movie. She's so fucking good. Incredible. What's next on your list, Holly?
Well, the next one on my list is actually one that not a lot of people have seen, but I just love to death. I thought it was fantastic. I watched it on Shudder. Ching! There's our episode quota for mentioning Shudder.
When the pandemic ends, Shudder, you better pony up.
Yeah, man.
It's about fucking time.
And I was scrolling through Shudder, and I was in the mood for like an Angels and Demons kind of movie. And there wasn't a lot, but I saw the thumbnail of this one with a stone statue, and it's got a kind of unfortunately long title that puts people off of it. It's called The Last Will and Testament of Rosalind Lee.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. It's a mouthful. So, you know, people, it's hard to praise a movie like that, because you're like, how do you abbreviate a title like that, you know? And how do you, what does that even mean? And people are just like, what? That sounds lame and stupid, and you know. But I watched it, and it's an awesome slow burn that takes place in an incredible house. Basically, the plot is that the main character is an antique dealer, played by Aaron Poole. His name is Leon. His mother dies and leaves him this house. And actually, the voiceovers of his mother are provided by Vanessa Redgrave.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, and
speaking of Angels and Demons, has nothing to do with it, but if you can get a good copy of The Devil's Guys, watch it. It's good. It's very, very good. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's fine. The whole thing takes place in this amazing house, and I honestly think that if the house weren't so incredible, that it might have gotten a little boring. But when Leon comes home and like looks at this house that his mother's given him, like there are angel statues everywhere. There are like, you know, taxidermied creatures everywhere. There are like bizarre fountains and just sculptures of all kinds. And
sounds like there's a lot of set design in this one.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I was watching it, I was like, I wish I lived in that house. It's an amazing house.
Yeah.
But most of the film is Leon, you know, remembering his mother, remembering something she used to do with, like, you know, an angel statue and 3 candles, about believing in angels, and And, he calls his psychiatrist several times because he's freaking out and there are creepy things in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, we get introduced to the demon that really makes the film. He's sort of a goat demon. I think they sort of call him a cat demon too. But he walks on all fours and he's got fur and like spiky ears and this weird like sort of humanoid face.
Yeah.
And he's fast and he runs after the guy when he's outside, and then he comes in and like hangs over his bedpost and like licks his face, and it's just so effective and horrifying. Like, I don't know what it is about the design of this particular demon, but after all that slow burn, like at least 50 minutes of it, to get to this really creepy demon is so satisfying.
So yeah, so I'm going to talk about one. It's a little bit different from these. You don't necessarily see an angel, you don't necessarily see a demon. Like you just kind of like in the mind of this man who thinks, that it's his mission. Because he's on a mission from Gad.
Gad.
But of course, I'm talking about the Bill Paxton directed Frailty, masterwork. So,
absolutely incredible.
So
probably
fucking
one of my top 5 horror films of all time.
Mm-hmm. So fucking good. And like, there's not a lot of whiz bang to it or anything. If you guys haven't seen it, I mean, it is literally the story of a man who feels that he is God's disciple, and it's his job to touch the heads of everybody and see if they actually have a demon inside them. They've obviously done some really horrible shit or whatever it is, so technically he's kind of like a religious Dexter, I would say. Sounds really cool, but it's not something you see throughout the entire movie. So what you're seeing is the kids actually, like, as they're adults in the beginning, Matthew McConaughey is one of his sons. He actually goes to an agent named Powers Booth, and he tells him that his brother was the God's hand killer after his father, and that he would, take him to him and all. Well, he committed suicide, but he was, going to take him to all these different, he's got all these different plannings and shit like that, laying around. So as he's telling him this, he's telling him like, basically like his entire life story about him and his brother grew up with their father, Bill Paxton, who, by all intents and purposes, you automatically think is just completely out of his mind. He's a crazy person.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, even when he's doing this really horrible shit, like actually like murdering people with this axe that he calls God's hand, he's really just kind of demure and very sweet. Like, even when it comes to the point where he's actually, pushing his sons to feel, and understand, the situation, why he's doing what he's doing. And, you guys kind of need to be in the same fold as me and this and that. So he does punish them quite a bit. One of them actually has to dig for, I think there was like a shelter that he was actually building so he can actually, go down and do what he does. He does his work down there. And he, like, to teach him a lesson very sweetly though, like, he's
that's the thing, is that he's very earnest with his kids.
Yeah.
Like, he's not mean to them. He's like, I want you to understand why I'm doing this.
Right.
And it's hard to hate him because he believes in it so much, and he's just trying to, make his kids believe too. So
yeah. So when, like, he forces one of his kids to, dig a shelter, isn't like, get down in the fucking hole, you little prick. You know what I mean? It's just like, I'm teaching you a lesson. And, like, he doesn't give him gloves, like, so he's got blisters and shit all over his hands just to prove a point. Like, what I mean? Like, you need to understand what I'm doing here. So everything he puts his, children through is, completely out of a father's love, which is really interesting. You know what I mean? It's not like, some, fucking insane serial killer or some abusers just slapping him around every 5 seconds. It's not like that at all.
It's not a traditional villain archetype.
No. No.
Without a villain in it. You just watch these kids, as their father tries to teach them how to cleanse the world of evil people, essentially.
Yeah. So the interesting thing, and again, we're getting into spoiler territory here. Once he did, like we've been led to believe, what we want to believe in the beginning, like, oh, this guy's, psychotic, and he's got, all these different, wires that are, like not crossed the proper way. But it actually turns out that when he does touch the head of certain people, he does see a fucking demon. And they've done some really horrible shit.
Yep.
So of course, once the children start to understand this, they start taking it into their own lives. And the brother that, Matthew McConaughey he actually flipped the script, and he was the brother that was actually the God's hand killer. And he was taking Powers Booth to the Rose Garden where their father actually buried everybody after he hacked them up. And it turns out that Powers Booth, once he touches his head, had initially killed their mother because their father was a widow. So he was a demon too. Beautifully executed, really simple little movie. It probably didn't cost all that much.
Incredible acting from everyone.
Oh God, yeah.
Especially the kids too. Like, it's great.
Bill Paxton. He's proved it many times that he's got chops. But he wasn't playing the guy that's like really loud and boisterous and funny. He was playing very, very serious. There's nothing satirical about this movie. It's completely drama all the way through. And they should have been nominated for some awards for that, I think. I
agree totally. Frailty is incredible. If you have not seen it, it's like, we talk about not everything has to be a masterpiece and that you should just watch fun movies sometimes. Frailty is a masterpiece.
Yeah, for sure. Holly, what's next on your list?
Well, next on my list is actually a pair of movies. You'll probably figure out why I'm putting them together once I start to describe the first one, which is called Curse of the Demon, adapted from the British Night of the Demon. It's an older film. It's 1957, black and white. It's a British production directed by Jacques Tourneur, who did The Cat People. And it's based on a ghost story about the leader of a Satanist cult who can curse people by handing them something with runes written on it, and then they have 3 days to live.
Oh wow! Okay.
So the main character is played by Danny Andrews. He's an American, and he gets cursed by the satanic leader because he's been investigating the cult and everything, and he's supposed to be a psychologist, and so he's investigating how these people's minds work and blah blah blah. And he gets past the piece of paper with the runes on it, and he has to solve the mystery essentially and figure out what he has to do to not be attacked by this demon after 3 days. Which, spoiler, is you have to pass the runes back to the person who gave it to you.
Okay.
And it's funny because there was so much controversy in this film about the actual demon, like the effect, the puppet that appears at the beginning and the end of the film. People like the director famously naysays the demon. They're all like, that freaking demon, it's just it ruins the movie and blah blah blah. And I'm just like, okay, this is clearly in a time when genre pictures were not respected, and all these people wanted people to respect their movie. And if you put a monster in there, then people didn't take it as seriously. But this demon is fucking awesome. Like, for a 1957 special effects, they weren't really known for their great monster effects in those days. But this demon looks fantastic. He materializes out of the sky in like this sort of white vapor and comes, basically flies and comes after you with his massive hooves and his wings. And he looks great. So screw people who don't like the demon because they're wrong.
This sounds very familiar to something else.
Exactly. That's why I'm talking about a pair of films. The second one is Sam Raimi's Drag Me to Hell, which...
Or Drag Me to Heck, as Bruce Campbell calls it.
Which is a great, like, just gross, creepy, fun horror flick that Sam Raimi did, I think, after he finished all the Spider-Man movies and he was sick of mainstream shit. So he was like, I'm going to make this movie with a creepy old woman who curses the main character. Again, you have Alison Lohman's character, the main character, has 3 days to live.
Yeah.
And she ultimately has to solve the mystery and find out that whatever the woman passed to her, an object or piece of paper or whatever, she has to get rid of it. She has to pass it on to somebody else.
It's her and her very feminine boyfriend, played by Justin Long, but go ahead. We won't get into that.
Well, he's not that he's feminine. It's that he's useless. You know? Like this woman is like literally facing hell, and he's just like, oh, we'll get through this together.
Let me cook you something. Let me open up a bottle of wine and rub your shoulders. Yeah, that's going to help me.
Right? But,
Thanks, honey.
And both movies contain a really pivotal scene of a seance. Curse of the Demon does, as well as Drag Me to Hell, where there's a talking goat. Love that scene. And
you bitch.
Yes. And so, you know, it as similarly to Curse of the Demon, in Drag Me to Hell, she has to basically try to figure out the mystery of what she has to do to get rid of the object that was passed to her.
Which is a button in this case.
Yeah, which is a button in this case, but she didn't know that. She thought it was something else. And the twist with the Drag Me to Hell is that while Curse of the Demon actually ends with the main character successfully passing the runes back, Drag Me to Hell ends with her being dragged to hell.
Oh, yeah. But she's being tormented through this movie by this disgusting old woman. Like,
oh, God.
Who's spitting bugs on her face and all kinds of stuff, man. You know, that's the great thing about this movie. I know, you know, some people shit on it for whatever reason. I don't know, you know. But, you know, that's critics. And honestly, like, you know, I can only agree with a few critics, like Chris Stuckman from YouTube. What's up, Chris? But anyway, yeah, so there's a lot of slapstick comedy in it, and it's just really, like, you know, gross and funny, and, you know, some of the set pieces, some of the action set pieces are amazing, like, you know, the shit in the car, you know, where the woman's, like, you know, in the front seat, and she's, like, trying to reverse, and the woman's, like, you know, flying everywhere. And
the woman, like, breathing on her. So gross.
Oh, man. Yeah, Drag Me to Hell's I like that one. That's a winner. I like it very much. Like you were saying. Like you're saying, at the end, of course, you know, she gets, spoilers, guys, it's the name of the fucking title. She gets dragged to hell. And people are like, well, where's my sequel? What sequel?
Once again, on the train tracks, because she was about to escape and go on a train to vacation, but she does not. She gets dragged to hell through the train tracks.
Right, exactly. And people are like, you know, I've heard people say, like, where's the sequel? What sequel? What are you talking about? She's a goner.
Yeah, I remember. I think it's really interesting that the two movies follow such a similar pattern. I don't know if anybody has ever asked Sam Raimi about it. Like, did you get your inspiration from Curse of the Demon? But, you know, both totally different films. But you know, it's pretty fascinating to parallel them anyway. So.
Well, if I had a shake of magic crystal ball, I'd say yes.
both are great. Both are great.
I would definitely say he was inspired by Curse of the Demon.
Yeah.
All right. My next pick on the list. You know what? Let's go into a comedy for a second.
I can do that.
And people are going to go like, you know, oh, well, why are we talking about this? Because, you know, these particular comedies have, you know, angels and demons, and they also have horror elements to them. Like, you know, proof's in the pudding. You know, watch them for yourself. But Kevin Smith, you know, that guy's always been a huge hero of mine. I'm, you know, from the East Coast, and, you know, like, you know, just like Richard Linklater before with Slacker, and, you know, like it really put, you know, East Coast kids on the map, because we were just, you know, were hanging outside of stores talking about bullshit, smoking cigarettes, you know, Star Wars and comics and shit when it wasn't cool at all.
It was not mainstream.
No, you weren't doing very well in the ass department if you were fans of any of these things that I just mentioned. But anyway, I digress. So I'm talking about Dogma, and this is a movie that, you know, even though it's got, you know, I wouldn't even say religious undertones. I mean, the thing is like in your face, fucking religious. You know, like if you're like Catholic, you know, you've heard about all this stuff that he's talking about. So he got in a lot of trouble for this, death threats, this and that, blah 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 blah. But it's really cool because it's, you know, like obviously he's done Clerks and he's done Mallrats, he's done this stuff, but this was Kevin Smith like really getting into fantasy for the first time.
Yeah, it was his first foray into that, really. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I thought he did an excellent job. If you guys have not seen Dogma, it's two angels named Bartleby and Loki, and they are thrown out of heaven and forced to live eternity in Wisconsin. So basically, they find a loophole because there's a cardinal named Cardinal Glick, played by the wonderful and late George Carlin, and he's you know, trying to bring a new poppy spin to Catholicism called Catholicism Wow, and introduces the Buddy Christ. So they find the loophole, and they're going to go back to Jersey to, you know, basically it's something in Catholicism called indulgence, which is basically like, you know, all your sins are basically like repealed. You know what I mean? So everything they did, you know, they can actually like, you know, go back into the gates of heaven, but at the same time, it just unmakes everything. So they get to go home, but we're all fucked. So of course it's a Jay and Silent Bob vehicle, and they meet up with a woman who really ballsily works at an abortion clinic. And she kind of gets sent on this journey where she's introduced to the great Alan Rickman, who plays the Metatron, and you know, kind of goes on this weird, dare I say, Wizard of Oz adventure with all these religious characters coming, you know, into the woodwork, like Chris Rock, who's the 13th apostle named Rufus, that they never mentioned in the Bible. But yeah.
I mean, the scene that always stood out for me was the shit demon scene.
Oh yeah, the Golgothan. Yeah, I was just going to bring that up. But the thing, you know, people are wondering about where all the horror elements are. There's a scene where there's a fake fast food chain in most of Kevin Smith's movies called Movies, and they go into the executive offices of Movies and basically torment these people at the table. Like, you know, and your son, you sick fuck, you know? So basically just like throwing all their sins out there, you know, toss them into the wind. And of course, because they're all sinners, they fucking blow away every single person at the executive table, except for one woman, until Matt Damon says, you know, hey, you're good. You know, like everything's fine. But you forgot to say God bless you when I sneezed, and puts a gun in her face, like, you know, threatening to kill her. And that's when, you know, Ben Affleck's like, you know, come on, let's go. Get out of here, come on. So there are horror elements to this. Especially the scene at the end, the third act, where Bartleby and Loki finally like reveal their wings, and they're taking all of these parishioners that are at the Catholicism Wow event and dropping them like from like 30 feet in the air, and like, you know, just splatting them on the ground like grapefruit. There's some really horrific scenes in this movie. So, you know, of course, you know, we know that Kevin, you know, kind of went into the foray of horror and stuff like that, and we know he's a fan of that kind of stuff. So it's just really just a mix of all these things that he loves. So it's like, you know, fantasy and, you know, his own questions of faith, I guess. You know, I wouldn't necessarily call it like, you know, I love Jesus. It's not that kind of movie. It's just his own take. It's his own take. You know, what we've actually believed is just, you know, kind of bullshit. You know, like, you know, who says that God, if he does exist, is actually a man? Who says he's anything? Who says that God isn't binary, non-binary? Who says that he isn't a woman? And that's the kind of things that Kevin Smith plays into in the movie. And I think it's just brilliant. It's brilliant, and probably one of his best, I would say. So if you guys haven't seen Dogma, I highly, highly recommend it. And Holly's also going to talk about a comedy.
I am.
I'm going to try not to laugh because this movie, like, it makes me laugh so hard.
The thing is that I famously do not watch comedies. I generally find them boring, a waste of time. I don't really laugh at most of the jokes because I guess I don't really have a traditional mainstream sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always really reluctant to watch this, and I owe this to my roommate James, who kept pummeling me with it. You know, you want to watch this? And I was like, no. And finally, I was like, okay, fine. Mm-hmm. So we put in this movie, and it's, how to describe this film? It's incredible. It is so funny. Mm-hmm. It's so funny and so just unique and bizarre. This Is the End stars a bunch of comedians as themselves. Mm-hmm. We've got Seth Rogen, James Franco, Jonah Hill, Jay Baruchel, Danny McBride, and Craig Robinson. Mm-hmm. And they all play themselves, so it's like this weird level of meta. And like there's one of the opening scenes is like a rave party at James Franco's house, and he's got all this crazy art, like penis art, and like it's like the ultimate making fun of yourself movie, you know?
Yeah.
And what happens is, in the middle of the party.
And the interesting is they have all painted themselves as dicks, complete and utter dicks.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what makes it so funny.
Uh-huh.
Well, what happens is in the middle of the party, revelations essentially happen. The world ends. The good people get sucked up into heaven, and the bad people remain behind.
All the comedians.
Yeah, and that first scene with the when the chasm opens up in the yard, and Michael Cena gets stabbed with a telephone pole. And, you got Aziz Ansari, like, hanging on the edge of the chasm, like, no!
It's like, get off me, Aziz!
So funny. But,
didn't Paul Rudd fall into the chasm, too, I think he showed up?
A bunch of comedians fall into this chasm. And it shouldn't be funny, but it really is.
Oh, it's super funny.
Okay, and basically, the six actors that I mentioned are quarantined for the apocalypse because they don't know what's outside. They're terrified of outside, mm-hmm. and they just know they saw a whole bunch of their friends die. And they move.
Wow, this sounds very familiar.
They move into the typical apocalyptic scenario of like, oh my God, it's our last piece of cheese, and we have no water, and that would be like
like we've got LSD, Captain Crunch, 2 porno mags, mushrooms.
Standard, but it's so funny because they just make fun of themselves the whole time. Mm-hmm. Like it's so much just.
And then of course Danny McBride, who was asleep on the couch the entire time, he didn't even fucking know it happened.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was the end of the world. Wakes up, cooks all their food. I mean, Jonah Hill gets raped by a demon. I mean, there's so much random crap. But I think what the awesome thing about it was when I was watching it, for the first portion of the movie, you don't know what's outside.
Right.
You just people just stick their heads out or come back in, and they just know that there's something horrible outside. They don't know what it is. But finally, they have to go outside to get water. And they go to a neighboring house. And I wasn't expecting a comedy to go this hard.
Oh, it's not clear outside, by the way, too. It's like fucking like fire and brimstone outside. Like just smoke and fire.
But it's still, I wasn't expecting them to like go all balls out on the horror, Mm-hmm. This demon dog crashes through the window, and it's really fucking scary. Like This is Ghostbusters demon dog times 10. They did.
I was gonna say it's good to see them back in some kind of work. The demon dogs Ghostbusters. I was gonna say it's good to see them back at work. The demon dogs.
Oh yeah, somebody give them work. Love the Ghostbusters demon dogs, but this one is huge and very scary, and then they meet, you know, there are other demons, like there's one with massive one with wings, and you know the
with huge balls and a massive cock.
Devil like has like balls swinging back and forth, and he comes to kill them. But it's seriously creepy, like amazing apocalyptic shit. So you've watched this whole movie like lightheartedly and laughed a lot, and then all of a sudden you've got like this really intense, like violent apocalyptic, you know, ending. Where
the other thing I love about it that you haven't mentioned is that, like, you know, when they're off on their own, they have these really like serious emotional conversations with each other, you know, when it comes to like, you know, their faith, or, you know, like, you know, maybe I was a fucking awful person this whole time, you know what I mean? Like they're really contemplating shit during this whole situation.
Yeah, well, I mean, they find out that basically that the better of a person you are, if you're a great person, all of a sudden this beam of light will come down from heaven and snap you up. So they're, you know, they're various antics.
We're actually going to talk about another classic. This is actually, I don't even know if he had his surgery yet. I'm not sure, but you know, it was announced that Doug had pre-existing conditions when it came to possible cancer in his ass, like he would say it, you know, and you know, but you know, it's not a joke, you know, he's, you know, he was going through surgery and stuff. I think it was actually it was benign, so you know, I think everything's okay with him, but you know, we do wish him well. I've worked with Doug in the past, and he's just a wonderful man, just really is.
Get well soon.
Yeah, definitely. But of course, you know, we're going to talk about the original Hellraiser. So I'm going to let Holly talk first, because, you know, we've got kind of different perspectives when it comes to this movie. Not in a hateful way at all. It's just, you know, like just the way we think and feel about it. But I'll let her go first. So Holly, what are your thoughts on the original Hellraiser by the great Clive Barker?
It's my favorite 80s horror ever. It's not, if you put it in the slasher genre, it's absolutely my favorite. I wanted to marry Pinhead when I was a kid, walking up into the video aisles, and I would see Pinhead on the covers of those the VHS covers, and I'm like, that guy's awesome. This movie, it's really impressive, because even though the Cenobites, you know, the S&M leather demons became like the face of the movie because they're so unique looking. The first one really doesn't have a lot to do with them. The first one is sort of about betrayal and, you know, and the things that the crazy horrible things you'll do for love and
sex.
Sex, exactly. And
in this case,
basically this guy Frank, who's been having an affair with Julia, who's married to somebody else, this guy Frank decides that he's experienced all earthly pleasure can get him, and he hunts down this box that, when you put it in a particular configuration, the Cenobites come and essentially put chains in you and give you unearthly pain and pleasure. The characters are really well portrayed in this film. I know you were talking about the character of Julia to me.
Well, yeah, I've done you know, through my career, I've actually done some really heavy duty, like school report sized articles on this movie and the entire series. You know, I've talked to, you know, I've interviewed Barbie Wild, you know, Nick Vince and Simon Bamford and all the Cenobites and stuff. I love this fucking series. But you know, the one thing I love about this one in particular is that, you know, like you said, you know, like we focused on Pinhead and we focused on the Butterball, and we focused on, you know, like the Chatterer, you know, because they're amazing looking, they're fucking phenomenal. And the interesting thing about it is that Clive had absolutely no money at all for this fucking movie, none. And I think Tony Randell, who was the director of the second, I guess he was like kind of the financier for the film. So he would go back to America, he'd shoot back to America, and, you know, like these guys need, you know, X amount of bucks, you know, and they'd be like, I don't know, you know, whatever. So like they had no fucking money to play with. So they would get a little bit more, and then they'd be able to do a little, more effective, stuff when it comes to effects and things like that. And the effects are phenomenal. Like when Frank, like his heart's in the floorboards, kind of like this Edgar Allan Poe fashion, and then all of a sudden these legs sprout out, and holy shit, guys! Like, I mean, I'm really disgusting, and it's just dripping and slimy, and everything's, kind of, geared, towards sex in some way. Just everything's wet and drippy and fucking, you know what I mean? That's totally Clive. Yeah. That's totally Clive. But yeah, but the most interesting thing about this movie is that, even though the Cenobites were front and center when it came to the posters and this and that, it is a love triangle at its core. And, you've got Julia, who is the wife of this wet twig of a man. I mean, just, he's not good in bed. He's a wimp. He cuts himself on a nail, and he's just like, I'm bleeding, and he that's where the blood comes from for his brother to come back from hell, because he's like dripping all over the place. And she's so fucking like bored and, just kind of, I wouldn't necessarily even call her evil at that point. She's just a bored housewife, like really, really bored, with her fucking beautiful hair and her Sheila E. Sugar Wall earrings. And I had a huge attraction to Claire Higgins.
Classic 80s fashion in this movie.
Major. But anyway, yeah. So, so you see this descent of this woman, that she starts, thinking about, like coming and orgasming and actually like enjoying life. And that's through, Frank. He comes to the door, his hair is all wet, he's like, I'm Frank, and he's just, like this amazing rock star of a man who does these pretty incredible things with his life, even though he lives like a fucking squatter. They move into his house. It's disgusting. There's fucking there's pots with fucking cockroaches running through the kitchen and shit. It's just really, really gross. But yeah, so you see her descent, and that's the hellbound heart. That's what the original book is at its core. That's the title of the book. Yeah. What would you do for something that you consider love? And you see it happen to women all the time. And it makes sense that she would become the queen of hell, in the sequel. You know what I mean? It totally makes sense, because she kind of found herself. She found her true calling.
I can make positive comments about pretty much, well, at least every Hellraiser movie up to number 4. I think they're all, number 4, Chatterbeast, hello.
So we're actually going to go back in the action side, and I'm just going to talk a minute about Constantine, because I don't want to get too much into it. And Holly actually has a more interesting take on Constantine that I'm actually more fascinated by. So of course, there's an original comic by the great Alan Moore. Don't kill us, Alan.
Yeah, Constantine, created by Alan Moore in the 80s, and Swamp Thing. In the comic book, just as a quick rundown, in the comic books, Constantine is he's a mage. He summons demons. He's always smoking. He's a Brit. He's got scruff. He's always in a trench coat. And the deal is essentially that he gets lung cancer from smoking so much, but heaven and hell both kick him out, so he's doomed to walk the earth forever, essentially. And that's the original basis for Constantine. I think when they were making the movie, I think they decided that having Constantine be British would be off-putting to the audience or something, or maybe it would sell better if he was American. So it's a lot of fun, the Constantine movie. It's got a lot of great things about it. I just can't look at it as my John Constantine, who's one of my favorite fictional characters of all time. Right. It doesn't feel like him to me, because they changed so much of it. And I love Keanu Reeves. I love it.
So you like the television show guy? You actually prefer him?
Oh yeah, Matt Ryan's awesome. Yeah. But yeah, no, the movie's great. It's by itself. I just have to take it by itself,
Yeah.
And
so let's talk about Constantine real fast. So, obviously, just like Hollywood does, they take a property and they make something out of it, and that was Constantine. Of course, played by Keanu Reeves. Really awesome performance by Rachel Weisz. I think she did a great, kind of dual role where she played the sister who obviously had a ton of faith, but somehow, she decided, I think she was, in a mental facility. She actually decides to kill herself. And Rachel Weisz is just kind of like, well, I don't believe that. I can't believe that my sister would do something of that nature. So basically, just like the Hellblazer comic, John Constantine has these abilities, and he hunts demons, and he can, talk to angels and, different mages and, black magic, people and stuff like that throughout the movie. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, like Holly said, it's like it's a really fun, it's a fun movie. It really is. I mean, there's some really great elements to it, especially with the whole near-death experience thing where, if he needs to transport himself or Rachel Weisz's character, so they can actually see, through hell, what exactly is going on, what exactly happened with the sister and stuff. There's some really cool effects in the movie.
Yeah, the effects are great in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Actually, my favorite performance is Tilda Swinton. She's
Gabriel.
Fabulous as Gabriel. Fabulous.
She's always fabulous in everything.
Everything, of course. But of course, the same situation happens with Keanu Reeves. He decides he wants to kill himself. He has got really seriously horrible cancer. And then by the third act, spoilers, the devil decides to actually punish him. So he takes away his cancer, and played by Keanu Reeves. Really awesome performance by Rachel Weisz. I think she did a great, kind of dual role where she played the sister who obviously had a ton of faith, but somehow, she decided, I think she was, in a mental facility. She actually decides to kill herself. And Rachel Weisz is just kind of like, well, I don't believe that. I can't believe that my sister would do something of that nature. So basically, just like the Hellblazer comic, John Constantine has these abilities, and he hunts demons, and he can, talk to angels and, different mages and, black magic, people and stuff like that throughout the movie. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, like Holly said, it's like it's a really fun, it's a fun movie. It really is. I mean, there's some really great elements to it, especially with the whole near-death experience thing where, if he needs to transport himself or Rachel Weisz's character, so they can actually see, through hell, what exactly is going on, what exactly happened with the sister and stuff. There's some really cool effects in the movie.
Yeah, the effects are great in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Actually, my favorite performance is Tilda Swinton. She's
Gabriel.
Fabulous as Gabriel. Fabulous.
She's always fabulous in everything.
Everything, of course. But of course, the same situation happens with Keanu Reeves. He decides he wants to kill himself. He has got really seriously horrible cancer. And then by the third act, spoilers, the devil decides to actually punish him. So he takes away his cancer and, says to him, well, I'm going to just wait, until you fuck up again. And that's pretty much that, so he gets to live. And, that's a weird bargain because he could just do the right thing because he stopped smoking at the end of the movie. You know what I mean? So the devil kind of fucked himself. But anyway, you want to talk about something really awesome, which is the animated movie.
Oh yeah, and I'll tell you about what part of what I love about animated movies when it comes to Angels and Demons is I mentioned earlier. Sometimes it can look kind of goofy to plaster a pair of CGI wings on the back of an actor. Mm-hmm. It just feels weird for some reason. But yeah. In animation, I feel like they can do anything and have it look great. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking 2D animation, not necessarily 3D.
Right.
And DC actually are absolute kings of the game when it comes to straight to DVD animated releases based on their properties.
That's pretty excellent. Yeah.
So much good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Justice League Dark was one we were talking about, which actually has Constantine in it.
For sure. Yeah.
But this animated movie I saw recently called Constantine City of Demons actually has him as the main character. and he's voiced by Matt Ryan, who played him in the TV show.
Mm-hmm.
And he's my Constantine. You know, he's oh bloody head fuck, you know, lighting cigarettes and he's always, you know, basically what I love about Constantine is that he acknowledges that he fucks up all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, when people come and ask him for help in this particular movie, it's a childhood friend.
No optimism whatsoever, right?
Yeah. In this movie, it's a childhood friend whose daughter has gone into like a mysterious psychic coma.
She's fucked.
She's been kidnapped by a demon that resides in L.A. Mm-hmm. And Constantine has to go to L.A., hence City of Demons instead of City of Angels. Mm-hmm. But I just love the way they capture Constantine in this movie. Like he's like, oh, there's always a price, you know. And the people who come to him are like, no, you can help me. He's like, dude,
you don't want my help.
Something fucked up always happens, mm-hmm. You know, and he's right.
At least he's honest.
Yeah. And the details in this film are really, really cool. Like all the scenes at the demon's lair in Los Angeles where he holds like weird rave parties. Mm-hmm. Like they're silent movies playing on a screen, and he'll like shove an unsuspecting human being into the screen, and all of a sudden it becomes like a torture movie. Wow. And like, you know, the lettering all changes and everyone in the scene tries to kill the person who's in there. I was like, that's totally random. It has nothing to do with the plot, but it's still fucking cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, I'm going to bring up one real fast, you know, just as a nod, but you know, when I was a kid, you know, like this is the kind of life we live, man. It's crazy. But I was a huge Chaos comic fan, and now I know fucking Brian Pulido and fucking Angels and Demons, dude. Lady Death, what is up, Brian? Fucking, you know, killing it with Coffin Comics right now. Good shit, real good shit. Lady Death's an awesome fucking character.
Yeah. But now he's Hell Witch too, which is also an awesome fucking character.
Oh yeah, Hell Witch. Fuck yeah, man. La Muerta. Love fucking Coffin Comics. There's your nod, dude. What's going on? So yeah, let's talk about a few more. I've got one that we didn't talk about. It's basically, you know, kind of like a battle, you know, between angels. Really great performance by Christopher Walken, who's just, you know, like very silently chewing the scenery throughout this movie. But you know, the prophecy is definitely one that we need to talk about. So if you guys aren't familiar, it's actually Thomas, who's played by Eric Stoltz. Another really, really underrated performer. Eric Stoltz is just amazing. So he is here on Earth to find the body of this captain, that, you know, military captain, because, you know, he passed away. Because it has something to do with, you know, like if he actually catches the spirit first, then he can actually prevent this war to continue. I guess it's like used as some kind of weapon or something. I would say like some sort of like sin atom bomb, I guess, would you call it?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Yeah, like a dark soul bomb or something.
Yeah, because this guy's done some really, really horrible shit. Like if Bill Paxton put his hand on this guy, he'd be like, ah, like, you know, he probably wouldn't be able to kill him right away because he'd just be like, what the fuck, dude? This guy's awful. But anyway, yeah. So there's Gabriel, which is God. So, you know, like just for a second, it's, you know, cool to think about that. That's my son's name, Gabriel. But
Gabriel is often the centerpiece of these stories, I find. I said Gabriel is often the centerpiece of these stories, which is
oh yeah, absolutely. So Gabriel's played by Christopher Walken, and he's basically trying to not only, like, you know, prevent humans from you know, knowing, you know, about, you know, this war and stuff. And so he's burning evidence, like, you know, by going and then Thomas actually has a fight with this other angel, and he basically like beats him to death. And then, you know, he goes into the morgue and he, you know, gets rid of the evidence and all that. But he's also trying to find the soul as well. And then you've got Elias Koteas, and he's a cop, or actually, no, he was a priest initially, and he lost his faith, and then he became a cop. And then you've got Virginia Madsen, who kind of gets put in this situation because I think one of her students is actually this young Latino girl,
The
who
one who gets battled with the
breathes
black
the
soul.
soul into her to hide it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got this whole thing, and like one of the coolest things about it is that like Gabriel's like really cheeky, and he likes using people that try to commit suicide or have committed suicide to do his bidding. Drive him around. Like he fucking hangs out in their apartment and stuff. Just talk shit. The entire time.
Yeah. He collects sidekicks from people who have tried to commit suicide. It's really, really pretty funny.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. That's probably where a lot of the comedy in the movie lies. But there's obviously this third act. They take this girl to like a reservation, and she's technically like dying with this thing inside of her, man. Like this thing is like really super powerful. It's like basically like sucking this poor girl's life force away. So they're getting ready to do kind of like this native like, or some sort of seance or something to pull the soul out or whatever. And that is when fucking Viggo Mortensen shows up as Satan. And I know you guys have seen a lot of interpretations of the devil, but this one, man, what do you got to say about Viggo when he shows up?
I love how understated he is and yet still so charismatic. Mm-hmm. Like he doesn't need to like show up in a ball of fire with like big red horns or anything like that. Like he whispers in people's ears like this is he's creepy more than he is like.
Yeah, he's just talking about like excrement and all kinds of fucking vulgarities and stuff, but it's so like you know what I mean, so calm.
It's artful. It's almost like Shakespearean grossness,
Yeah, and probably one of the sexier devils we've seen.
Agreed. Yep, absolutely.
But yeah, so of course there was a series of Prophecy movies, and they all went direct to DVD and stuff. I would actually recommend the Prophecy too. I've not seen the others, so I cannot say anything about them. But one thing I do love about that is like it is technically a time capsule, because another suicide victim that becomes kind of his consort, Gabriel's consort, is the late Brittany Murphy, and she's really good in it. She's really, really good in it. So I highly recommend those two movies. I don't know, guys, let me know in the comments if the Prophecy series is worth watching, because I know it went from like 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then it was semicolons, and then
there are a bunch of them. There are a bunch of them.
There's like 12 fucking Prophecy movies. I just don't have. Well, I do have the time, apparently.
Now we all have the time, right?
We all have the time now. Do you have any others, Holly?
I mean, I think we covered most of what I had. I mean, there's really nothing you can add to the conversation about The Exorcist that hasn't already been thrown out there,
Well, we can talk about The Exorcist 3.
We can talk about The Exorcist 3, which...
Well, let me tell the backstory first. So basically, if you guys are fans of the original Exorcist, it is not William Friedkin. William Friedkin had decided not to, take the reins of director for the third installment. And you know what? After, seeing Heretic, I don't blame him. It's awful. We are not fans of the Heretic here. But the third one is absolutely, it's remarkable. And, this was actually directed by William Peter Blatty himself, who wrote The Exorcist and wrote Legion, which is actually the sequel book that this is actually based on. Really, really fine performances, of course. One for the ages by Brad Dourif. If you guys aren't familiar with The Exorcist 3, it's actually a lieutenant played by George C. Scott. He has a friend who is part of the sacristy. He's a priest, and he takes him to the movies. One of them, or the movies, It's a Wonderful Life, with Jimmy Stewart. So there's a whole situation where his friend is brutally murdered, and they find It's a Wonderful Life pretty much carved into him, very, in a certain fashion. Like it actually reminds them immediately of somebody. And it turns out to be this Gemini killer, which is played by, who's played by Brad Dourif. So of course, there's another, there's a priest that gets decapitated, and there's just a bunch of weird shit going on. And George C. Scott's character is actually told about some weird stuff going on in an institution, and it turns out that the one of the patients is Father Karras from The Exorcist, and he is not acting like himself. He's acting like this Gemini killer. So as he's talking to him, you know, he's basically like, you know, seeing that there's, you know, this killer like is inside, you know, our, you know, famous priest Father Karras. And there's, you know, like some really interesting stuff going on in the asylum, like Brad Dourif, you know, actually, like, you know, when he comes out, because he literally comes out in Father Karras, like you see Brad Dourif's face. It's not like him, his voice or whatever. It's his entire, like, you know, his visage is there. And he tells him that, you know, he is in league with the master or the beast, you know, and he can pretty much control anybody in the asylum to do whatever he wants. So that's what he does. He kind of, you know, possesses other people within. And I think one of the craziest scenes that people remember, it's such a simple thing, but so fucking effective. And I think it's probably one of the greater film scenes out there for a lot of people. It's just a nurse walking through the hallway, and then you see a nun just kind of, like, you know, behind her, and people are just like, ah, like,
yeah. People were talking about their favorite horror scenes, and that one always got mentioned.
Yeah, which is, you know, I mean, it's great. It does nothing for me, you know, in terms of, you know, like spooking me or anything, but yeah, people seem to think that's one of the greatest scenes. So, you know, of course, there's a whole situation where they need to, you know, exorcise this, you know, Gemini killer from, you know, from Father Karras, and there's a whole, you know, third act that I don't want to get into, because honestly, I want you guys to watch The Exorcist 3. I don't think a lot of people talk about it. I don't think it's as beloved and cherished as it should be, and I know that a lot of us cinephiles or purists, like, you know, like who have seen it, like, you know, we hold that very, very high. And
it's on Shudder.
There's number 2. Once this world starts spinning again, Shudder, come on, man. Seriously. Actually, I do want to give a shout out to one thing I'm really excited about, and I hope they don't pull it, you know, just like everything else in the world right now. But I was a huge monster fan of Penny Dreadful, and Penny Dreadful City of Angels looks, man, that looks really, really good.
I'm a sucker for anything that calls itself City of Angels, City of whatever. Like, I'm total sucker for that stuff.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I live in LA, and I love this place so much. So
yeah. Well, you know, not to get too much into the details, but, you know, it's the 1930s, and the cops, you know, basically are like, you know, it's kind of like this whole Black Dahlia situation, except, you know, she's kind of painted up almost like in this Day of the Dead, you know, garish, you know, makeup, you know, when they find the body and stuff. And then Natalie Dormer, she's kind of like this, she's this demon, you know what I mean? So she's, you know, walking across the landscape of this 1930s Los Angeles, and it seems like there's a war waged between her at some point, and also what the Mexicans that are actually like fighting the LA cops believe in, you know, kind of like this Day of the Dead kind of like, you know, demon-esque thing that they have, you know, or spirit. It looks fucking dope, man. I can't wait for City of Angels. Nice. I know it's nothing like fucking, you know, that poetry in motion, but you know, that the original was, but, you know, we were talking about angels and demons. We definitely got to bring that up. That looks fantastic. I can't wait.
Quick shout out to Kenneth Anger's short film Lucifer Rising, which 20 minutes of utter like crack, complete mind trip stuff, like cosmic stuff, you know, with angels and demons, and it's if you can track down a copy of Lucifer Rising, I'd recommend it. Don't expect like coherent plot necessarily, but there's lots of really cool imagery in there. So.
Oh wow, cool. So we're just going to end off with this. Actually, there's one announcement. Just want to give a shout out to Craig Conway, who blessed us with the opportunity to be able to introduce every single one of our upcoming episodes on his podcast, which is going to be called Quarantine, which is he's actually doing in the UK. It's actually the station called Radio Shields. And the really cool thing about that, if you guys are Craig Conway fans from The Descent, of course, the awesome cult classic Doomsday. you know, he played a character named Saul, and he's going to be bringing Saul, this, you know, cannibalistic, you know, punk rock marauder back, you know, to you know, kind of host this thing. And he's going to be playing music, and you know, there's going to be celebrities and stuff. Sean Pertree's going to be one of them, he told me, and we're trying to get Rona Mitra for fucking Doomsday Reunion and shit. But yeah, so we're going to introduce every episode that we have coming up on there. So you know, hello UK, best wishes and safety to you guys. You know, and to everybody, you know, just keep doing what you're doing. I've seen, you know, like, especially like, you know, people in my community, like people are being real smart and they're staying home, and, you know, you know, even when they, you know, like deliver, you know, when they get food delivered to their house and stuff, they're, you know, like you know, using sanitation wipes and actually giving it to the driver to wipe down their steering wheel and shit. People are real fucking smart.
Yeah, most people.
Most people. But you know, we just hope everybody's safe, you know, that you know, your families are well. And you know, we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this. You know, I think the strength of humanity is actually, you know, stronger than, you know, like what exactly is going on now. Look at the things we actually survived in our past. You know what I mean? We do have a resilient spirit. And the one thing that I need to implore to you is that art is very, very important right now. That has to do with everything, you know what I mean? You have to, you know, put things out there, you know, make things real for people, you know, make them forget for a little while, you know?
Exactly. I mean, and for all those people who say things like, you know, there's so much horror going on in the world, how can you talk about comic books or whatever? It's like, no, dude, we need that stuff right now.
Yeah.
You know, we're all holed up in a bunker practically, and there's nothing to do but watch movies and read books and read comics and do art. And that's awesome. And I don't think there should be any stigma about celebrating art.
Thank you for joining us for episode 25. You know, we've got so much more coming. If you guys like this shirt of me and Holly, you can actually get that at the HorrorWeb store right now. It's really vintage and cool looking. I like it a lot. Initially we didn't. Now we're into it. We like it a lot. But yeah, that's it for us. Be safe out there, guys. Do the right things. Have a pint and wait for it all to blow over. And we'll scare you later. Talk to you soon. Oh, please like and share and subscribe on the HorrorWeb YouTube channel. Thank you guys.
Yes.
See you later.